everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Discovering Yourself podcast. So, my name is Rosie Sue. Firstly, I just want to say a huge, massive thank you to every single person that either watched my podcast, the video podcast, and every single person that listened to it. I'm super excited with what I have in store for my podcast. I've already talked to a lot of my friends and close friends, and there's just so much in store. I have really amazing people that I've met, and to hear their stories, like for instance, there'll be so much to cover. I've got a lot of friends who can talk about their journeys, that can talk about what makes them who they are, being brave, and I guess just living without fear of being who they really are. There's one that I was just talking to this morning. Her name is Vanessa. So she's a friend and she is Peruvian, and I can't wait to bring her onto the show because she is we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about her being indigenous Peruvian, and we talked about colonization, how she's super proud to be indigenous Peruvian, just lots of conversations around that, but I'll keep that for another time. And I guess it's just so many of my friends. Like, I'm super excited. I still need to schedule it in. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do this, but super excited. Like, there's so much content that I'm gonna bring out. But today I wanted to really record this because last night I had a really fascinating and interesting topic with my partner, and I love having conversations like we did last night. So in today's episode, what I will talk to you about is, one, I will talk about when I solo traveled to Mexico. Yes, as a female, solo traveled, and I was fine. I survived. But I really want to touch on, I guess, the notion and topic of how a lot of people take for granted how fortunate they are to live in a first world. I guess I will touch on, white privilege or privileges that people take for granted. And so let's have a chat. I will firstly start with my trip to Mexico, and then we'll dive deep into the other topics. In 2019, so my work sent me to LA, which was amazing. And I just thought, hey, I've done a bit of America already. So I said, what could I do to extend my trip? Where else could I go? So what I decided was that I wanted to explore a whole new country and a city, which I found was Mexico, which is, I guess, Central America, right? Central/South. Won't get into the topic, but let's say Central America. I remember, I guess, telling people, hey, I want to go to Mexico. And, one of my colleagues who had just been there with his partner a year ago was saying, where are you going to go? Are you going to go to Mexico City? Like, that's really dangerous. But I mean, yeah, of course I took on his advice. I understand the concerns, everyone's saying, oh, Mexico is so dangerous, that sort of thing. But I think the more I researched into it, I guess it just opens up conversations of when people say, oh, you're going to get raped. But, I read a comment that said, hey, that's actually extremely racist. And I do agree with that. It is extremely racist to say that you're going to get raped. Because most people who, I guess, are assaulted, sexually assaulted, there's a high statistic that it is someone that you know. Like, of course, I'm not disregarding the fact that it does happen. People get kidnapped and get killed, right? But you can't just say, oh, it's so dangerous. You're gonna get raped. Like, I just don't like that sentence. So let's talk about, I guess, so I made the decision. I said, you know what, I'm gonna go. Of course, I did a lot of research. And honestly, I would say that it's one of the best holidays ever. I mean, I've been to some, pretty amazing, had the opportunity to go to pretty amazing countries and cities. But Mexico has to be up there, I think. I don't know, maybe because of COVID, I haven't been anywhere for a couple of years. That was like my last international holiday. So let's talk about it. I decided to go Mexico solo. So on my own, can't speak Spanish, can't speak the language. I decided, I booked an Airbnb in the city. I did lots of research, and the place that I stayed at, Condesa, I believe, but I might just insert captions if you are watching the video podcast on where exactly I went, and I'll put in clips. So for those of you that are listening to this podcast, if you want, you can watch a video podcast. I always insert like little videos. Right. So I also booked Airbnb tours, and like it was just incredible. I mean, I did all my research. Like the first thing that I did in Mexico was that I went on a bike tour, and on the bike tour the tour guides will take you around, and we stop at the markets, we stop to eat tacos, street food, like a daytime thing, right? It was amazing. Like for those of you that don't know, I that's probably one of my favorite activities, like bike riding. And it was just incredible. I met other travelers, and I'm still, connected to them on social media. Story that I can tell you. So yes, I did my research. I did all the Airbnb tours. So of course you have reviews from, I guess, verified people, because I mean, we all know that you can, people these days, they probably buy reviews or buy all of these, right? So of course you do need to really, I guess, just know that whatever you're reading, it could be fake, right? But I did my research, and so I did the bike tour, and I do recall, so after the bike tour, there were like three of the tour guides, so three guys, and then there were other solo female travelers on this as well, so pretty amazing. So I wasn't the only brave one. So whenever I tell people I went to Mexico, they always say, wow, Rosie, you're so brave. But anyway, there were other brave people that went, right? So so there were three of us girls who stayed behind, and those three tour guides, like we had drinks, we had, what is the drink? Gosh, it slipped out of my mind now. Not tequila, the other one, the smoky one. But anyway, let's just carry on. So I recall, like I was telling them, saying, oh, I'm so excited. I booked a tour, like another bike tour, right? And then they said, oh, okay, cool. Where are you going to go? And I said, I'm going to go to Teotihuacan. So Teotihuacan, it's like the ruins. I will probably insert a clip in here. And the tour was that I would be, it would be like a bike tour. However, there was a catch, and the tour group or whatever, wanted me to make my own way there. So of course I was staying in, like, very much in the city, the touristy area, where it was, I guess, supposedly safe, right? So this is the thing, when you do travel to somewhere that I guess supposedly is ranked dangerous, is that there's always going to be pockets. And back to, my workmate who said, who's been there with his girlfriend, who said, oh, it's dangerous. But that's because they hired a car, and I know if you're listening, I'm not going to say your name, but they hired a car and decided just to go driving and just land anywhere, right? No, that's a huge no. You don't do that in South America. You don't do that, like, randomly. Like, even if you're a guy, like, you just don't do that. So that's what I mean. Like, it's not dangerous if you do enough research and just know what you're doing. So I feel like I did that. So back to my point. ironically, so yeah, I thought I researched well, right? And so I booked the tour. However, this bike tour to go to Teotihuacan, they wanted me to find my own way there. Which was actually like an hour away from the city because the ruins were like not in the city center. So I told the tour guides, and one of the tour guides, he was telling us, oh, he's been through a lot, and I'll touch on that a bit later on, right? On when people don't really have opportunities or options in like a third world country, but I'll get to that shortly. But he basically raised concerns, and he said that it was a red flag, the fact that one, I had to travel there myself, because he said you don't catch public transport and it'd be super unsafe. You're going in an Uber. Like, I just don't understand why the tour guide required you to do that. And then he said, secondly, he's like, where are you guys going to ride the bike? Because he was saying that at Teotihuacan, it was like, bumpy roads or whatever. So alarm bells were going off, in his mind. And then, so he was a local, obviously the tour guide of the current tour that I was on. And so he said, he's like, look, I would cancel it. Like, don't worry about wasting your money, because your life is probably more worth than whatever you paid for it. And yeah, so absolutely, I took his advice. And so I canceled the tour. I didn't go on that. So maybe I did have, guardian angels looking after me, and that was a lucky escape. So another girl on the tour, she, her name's Chantal. Hello, Chantal, if you're listening. So she actually went on a tour like in previous days to Teotihuacan. So she recommended a tour, and then I did that. So yeah, so I can talk about that later. But I guess that could have been a lucky escape for me, right? That I didn't go on that. Right. So what is my point in that? I guess everything else I did book on Airbnb. I mean, that particular tour, like, I guess I don't know, right? You just don't know. Maybe that local gave me the advice. He was probably just being more on the cautious side, advising me that I shouldn't go on this tour. But yeah, so who knows, right? So let me bring you to, I guess, aside from everything that was beautiful in Mexico, you do witness a lot of poverty at the same time. I have, of course I've witnessed this, like, when I went to China years ago with my mom, as well. It is confronting. A lot of people who, I guess, never step out of where they are probably don't realize their privilege. So what I mean by that, so back to that tour guide, his name was Sebastian. So Sebastian, what was his story? Sebastian's story was that he was in a gang in Mexico, and he was in a gunfight, and in a gunfight he literally witnessed like a rival gang shoot his mate, right? And that is just completely normal there. You can, that is just what happens. So he managed to escape that. So he has a new identity and everything, of course, because, you can't just escape a gang, right? But that just brings, that we had like, really insightful conversations as a group there. So what he meant is like, people just don't realize you just have no option in a country or city, like Mexico City, and in a country like Mexico, right? If you are born into whatever situation, you didn't have a choice, right? So for instance, another tour guide, he was saying that, or was it Sebastian? I can't remember. They basically said that, they met a kid, and, the kid was like, my dad has someone in his closet. So what he meant by that was his dad was a kidnapper. I think, like you can't be judgmental and just say, oh gosh, like what bad eggs are these people, right? Without actually realizing, like I had this conversation with Leo, who's my partner, and he's from Colombia, by the way, so he knows. He's from South America. So we had the conversation, and we always have this conversation, right? Like that example of the man who was a kidnapper, right? The kid saying, my dad has someone in the closet because he's kidnapped somebody. That just brings me to the understanding, and a lot of people, I feel like, maybe struggle to understand that when you have nothing, right, all you care about is looking after your family. So you have no options. I mean, if that is the only way, that is the only way. That is the result of what happens when the system fails you, when there's corruption, and a country and system that doesn't work, right? That doesn't function properly. So I guess that just brings me to other discussions that I want to have. There was like I'll touch more on my trip to Mexico, and I guess what I've witnessed. But let me just divert for a second and talk about Kim Kardashian, who came out with that quote. I think most of us have seen it on social media. It was an interview, and I think she said something like, people just don't want to work these days. People need to get the F up and just work. Like, you just need to work, and you need to, it's hard work, right? No one wants to work these days. There's many responses to that. I think it's completely tone deaf. There were really like great responses from Trevor Noah. So maybe I'll put it in the link if I do put this. So you'll see in the links for the description for this particular podcast. You can go watch them. But I guess my response to that is, it is extremely tone deaf, because you don't know, like in other countries, or let's say even my parents, like when other people work like a 40-hour job, like let's say someone is in another country working as a cleaner for 40 hours or even 50 hours, are you saying they don't work hard enough? Like, how insulting is that, right? You can't say that people are lazy and the only reason that you are successful is because other people are lazy. And that is just completely tone deaf, and you just really don't have self-awareness. Or maybe, I guess, that ignorance comes from not knowing anything outside of your life. So this video I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to play this or not, or perhaps I'll leave a link. But it's Angelina Jolie when she accepts her Humanitarian award, and it just sums it up perfectly. So what I'll do is I'll press play. I'm not sure in this podcast whether I can actually replay that, but if I don't, I guess I will just touch on it, right? So let me just press play now, because again, I'm not sure about the copyright, but just listen to this.
I have never understood why some people are lucky enough to be born with the chance that I had to have this path in life, and why across the world there's a woman just like me, with the same abilities and the same desires, same work ethic and love for her family, who would most likely make better films and better speeches. Only she sits in a refugee camp, and she has no voice. She worries about what her children will eat, how to keep them safe, and if they'll ever be allowed to return home. I don't know why this is my life, and that's hers. I don't understand that, but I will do as my mother asked, and I will do the best I can with this life to be of use. And to stand here today means that I did as she asked, and if she were alive, she'd be very proud. So thank you for that.
Right, so I'm not sure how I'm going to insert that clip in here, but it just sums it up really beautifully, that, you know, like, even if I can speak for myself, like, I remember years ago, like, when I went to China. So I have my mom's side of the family, they're in China, and my cousin, my first cousin, he said to me, so by the way, so my mom, you know, she grew up poor. She grew up, you know, rural, in a rural area of China. So my cousins, you know, they, of course, you know, it's very developed now, right? But his comment to me was, you don't realize how lucky you are. And my response was, I know, because I do know, right? So responding to and touching on, I guess, referencing the video and what I feel about this. And in that situation, when my cousin said that to me, I absolutely 100% know that I am lucky. I am, firstly, if I were not in this country, I would not have the opportunities and have done everything that I have done, right? Just because I've been given these opportunities doesn't make me better than someone else, somewhere else, doesn't make me more hardworking than someone else. I have this privilege simply because I'm lucky to be living in this country. And a lot of people forget that. So that comment that, you know, that Kim Kardashian, you know, the tone deaf comment of people just don't want to work these days, that just, yeah, it just irks a lot of people, irks me. People, I guess it just leads me to the common, you know, white privilege, but doesn't necessarily need to, you know, the person needs to be of that ethnicity. So let's just talk about privilege and what people don't understand about privilege. So privilege is, I guess if I can give you a definition, a summary, is someone who is born into privilege would have never had to face any discrimination or any hardship. And that's not their fault either, right? But those that are born in privilege, what they don't understand is, let's say, for instance, if we talk about growing up in Auckland, and you grow up in, your family were laborers, or they were blue collar and had to work very hard to put food on the table. Perhaps you had to share a room with two other siblings. Your family just didn't know where the next meal would come from, right? And then versus somebody who's born in privilege, they have a roof over their head, they have two parents with double income in a corporate job, like perhaps many of my listeners are from right now. So that kid, right, finishes school, and what do you think? Let's say one of them does better than the other, and the other one is looked down on by society, saying, oh, you know, that person just went on, you know, didn't go to uni, they went on to work as a cashier, right? Or they put down roles like that. But they don't understand the struggles and the privilege that some people have and some don't. So that is what causes inequities in society. And for my first component in my postgraduate studies, I did look at how we can make society more equitable through education. But anyway, I'm not going to go through that there. To summarize, I guess, just, you know, on my point, that's why I guess it's just difficult for me when I get it, like when people complain about like first world problems. Of course, I'm guilty of that. I'm no angel, right? Of course. So people who complain about, oh, having to go to the office or having to sit in traffic to commute to the office. Like, geez, my favorite quote is, you know, you have to switch the mentality of I have to with I get to, and then you will understand how lucky you are. So let's say, you know, someone says, I have to sit in traffic for an hour to go to work. Nobody, you get to sit in traffic for 1 hour to go to work. Like, if that is the biggest problem, how effing lucky are you? right? So I guess let's go back to my trip in Mexico and like what I witnessed. So one thing that I encountered was I was at the night market. And in the night market, with the food vendors, so sort of like I guess you can think about an Auckland night market, right? Or any night market that you've been to. There's food vendors, etc. So I, witnessed like a very heavily pregnant woman on her feet, walking around the night market selling whatever she was selling. I can't remember whether it was food or whether it was, I don't know, craft. I can't remember what she was selling. But that just breaks your heart because she should be sitting at home with her feet up, right? Maybe getting, having a partner who can support. Like, it's just so different to what you would experience in New Zealand. Another one, like, there's so many, like, if you go to anywhere basically in Mexico, if you go to like touristy spots, like, I don't know, there's one I did like a gondola experience, and in the bathrooms they will have, like, I've witnessed, like, girls, that are 14, and even with their moms selling, like, I don't know, selling items in the bathroom, right? So selling items such as, I don't know what they're selling, like maybe souvenirs or whatever, but they're in the bathroom selling that just to make $1. I think the one that broke my heart the most was, so I stayed at Guanajuato. So Guanajuato is honestly gorgeous. It's a small town. I stayed at a small Airbnb. So it was like my final day that I checked out, and I think I was going to fly back to LA and then come back to New Zealand. So essentially, I probably had some money remaining that I didn't need. When I was checking out, I saw a woman who had her baby in a carrier. So she had a baby in a carrier on the floor, and she was, scrubbing and cleaning the exterior of the building, what with her baby in a carrier. And I guess it just shattered my heart. Like, you just, people just don't realize their privilege. Like, if you were in New Zealand, you would have your maternity leave and you'd be sitting at home. We would probably think about things like, oh my gosh, the chemicals, the baby's inhaling, and all this, right? But I remember telling my mom this, and my mom's like, they can't even, she doesn't even have the opportunity to even contemplate or think about the risk of the chemicals. All she's worried about is putting food on the table. So she could be doing that job, right? Because she needed to buy nappies, making ends meet. Like, if you witness that for yourself, it really just brings you back down to earth to realize how lucky you really are. So what I did was, and again, I'm saying this not because I want, people to think some type of way about me, but I just wanted to share this because I guess, so I had remaining, I really can't remember, maybe 100 or 150 US dollars left. And I just thought to myself, like, shit, I don't need this money, right? Like, what am I going to buy? Some souvenirs in LA? Like, what am I going to buy with this, right? Or even like a Starbucks drink, right? It's just crazy. I just put things into perspective. So I approached her, and I just gave it to her. I think I said, gracias, like, with my limited Spanish, and I just gave that to her. Um, and yeah, and then I just walked away because for me, like, that 150 I easily can earn back, right? Because just going back to work, that money will just come back. For goodness sakes, in New Zealand we would even buy a dress for that much, or shoes or whatever, or going out on a night out. So, and for her, maybe that 150 would have been like a month's salary, if not more, right? But my point isn't that, oh, what an amazing person you are, Rosie. No, that's not my point. It is really like you just don't realize the privilege that you have. And so I guess, I don't know, like, I understand we can't all solve this problem, right? There's just, like, you can't eradicate poverty. There's just nothing that you can, like, do, right? I'm sure there are things you can do, but what I'm trying to say is just, I guess, learn to be one, just be grateful. Like when you are having a first world problem, or when you view others and think that they aren't, are in the situation that they're in because they are not as hardworking as you, like get a reality check. You wouldn't be where you were if you didn't have the privilege and opportunities you were given. You were dealt with better cards than someone else. So you wouldn't be where you were in life if you were born simply in a different family and like different circumstances. So I really don't like it. Just really bugs me when people, I guess, judge others based on their job title. I think that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, right? When I get it, when someone meets someone, they want to know, oh, what does, your blah, blah, what do they do for work? What do you do for work, right? I get it, like maybe it's just curiosity, just a conversation, breaking the ice, whatever, that's fine. But to a certain extent, people who would maybe judge someone who, I guess, is in a lower position or job than they are, right? Without even understanding that we all work just as hard. Everyone works 40 hours, right? What makes you better than someone else? So I really hate that. I don't know. There's just so much I can get into. Even like if we look at, those in society that never, like, that the system failed them. I could talk about this a whole lot more. Yeah, but anyway, so let's get back to what I wanted to touch on with in Mexico. So I let me tell you a story, and then I'll tell you about this sweet girl that I met. It's actually quite a funny story. So let's take a slight segue in here. I was in Guanajuato, so that is the small town, and I went into like this candy store, and I was buying like some candy or whatever, and there was a girl, I think she was 13, right? So she was behind me, waiting in the queue. So what I did was I paid for my stuff, and then I was asking the cashier, I think in English or broken Spanish. No, I can't speak Spanish, so no. So obviously English. So I was saying to her, I'm like, tequila with worm, like where can I buy it from? Like I don't know how I was asking this question, but basically it was for my mate Amelia. If you're listening to this, she wanted like a bloody tequila with a worm in it. So I was asking that question, but I don't think she understood what I was trying to say. But the 13-year-old girl behind me, she said, excuse me, I speak some English. And she was so excited, right? And so I told her, I said, oh, like tequila, like worm. And then I think she understood what I was saying. She's like, okay, come with me. So her name is Regina. She's so sweet. So Regina, and it's pretty funny. So she took me to the liquor store. And then it's pretty funny. She went in. I think I was standing by the door because it was a very small alcohol store. And she was like, speaking in Spanish, asking whether they had that alcohol. And then the person behind was asking her, saying, we can't sell it to you, you're 13. So then I had to be like, oh no, it's for me, So anyway, so we cleared the air, and yeah, I think I did manage to get it. So yeah, so I met, she was so sweet. Her name was Regina. She was super excited. So she's really into K-pop, and she said that she's never met an Asian person, so she was really excited to meet me, and let alone I think she said she's never met a person from overseas, or talked to someone from overseas. Of course, in your head you might be thinking, gosh, little girl, like it's so dangerous for her to be talking to a stranger, right? But anyway, so she was really excited. English was actually pretty good, so she was learning English in school. So then she was super excited, and then she's like, where are you staying? I can walk you home or whatever. So she walked me home and everything. I know some of you that are probably thinking, ooh, maybe like, knowing, I guess, the corruption that could exist, perhaps she was a ploy to kidnap me. I don't know, like sometimes my partner says that. Okay, so anyway, thankfully it was all innocent and everything. So she was really sweet, and she said, oh, I want to take you to the night market. So the night market that I referred to, that's where she took me. So she basically went back to her place, and then she got my number to message me. So of course she had to ask permission from her parents, because she said, I want to take you to the market, but I can meet you later tonight. So I know now that I'm retelling the story, it does sound like a trap to kidnap this tourist by using a sweet innocent girl to lure me. Anyway, so she so she came and met me where I was staying, but her older sister came. Her older sister was 16 or something, maybe just to vet and see that I was, not some psycho. Like maybe the tables to turn, thinking that I'm not some weirdo who's going for food with this 13-year-old. But it all worked out fine, right? So she took me to the night market and everything. But another thing that I guess just broke my heart as well was, when you ask, I asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? So in our first world in New Zealand, I think if you ask any kid from a first world country, what do you want to be when you grow up? The answer would be astronaut, singer, actress, teacher, I don't know, anything, right? So they can be anything, right? A scientist. So do you know what her answer was? Her answer was she wanted to work at the airport, and she wanted her ultimate dream was she wanted to work at the airport as an administrator. So I guess when I say it's heartbreaking, it's not because I'm placing any judgment on that career that she is choosing, but the reality is that is her reality and what is possible in her town. She said she'd have to travel to maybe the city, Mexico City, in order to pursue that career. So in her mind, she's just thinking realistically, what are her options? And that was an option for her and a dream for her. Whereas in New Zealand, I'm pretty sure if you go into class and ask 13-year-olds what they want to be, they could say all these things, right? They can fly to the moon. They would think of everything, be an entrepreneur, I don't know, trade in stock, create NFTs, like all these opportunities that is not even in the radar for kids from a third world country. So that was... I didn't realize how deep we would be getting in this particular episode. But yeah, I think it's an important conversation that I really did want to bring up. I am very passionate about finding out who people are, where they came from, people's mindset, So that's what really drives me to, I guess, understand people. And the purpose of this podcast, right? I just want to have these real conversations, real organic conversations. It's not about, how to make more money, right? It's not about how to be, I don't know, a millionaire, how to become a millionaire or whatever, right? Of course, the reality is my successes, I've managed to monetize my passion. And that is, I guess, in future episodes, we'll talk about that. But I also want to draw attention to real conversations like this and lessons learned. And the types of, I guess, conversations that people need to be having. You can't, I guess it's very ignorant for some people to get on with life and be very judgmental on others, perhaps even those that are incarcerated. I do have empathy. You don't know their story. There is an organization that last year that my partner and I volunteered with for graphics and marketing for. They're called the Healing Innovation Hub in New Zealand, and they want to help at-risk kids. And these at-risk kids, boys, perhaps they are dropouts, they had a very traumatizing childhood. So I think it's really beautiful what they're doing, because really, I guess society and the system, it does unfortunately fail a lot of people. Um, and if let's say that kid who is 14 years old came from a very abusive family, um, didn't know any other way. He was just exposed to, I guess, drugs and theft at a very young age. What do you think his options are, right? So when he goes and steals or whatever, you might say, oh gosh, like, whoa, scum, right? Or you might just label them without understanding where they came from. Why did they do that? So it just takes the conversation much deeper when we talk about, I guess, understanding their traumas, their upbringing, and understanding that not everyone has been dealt with the same cards. So I think I'll probably wrap up in this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. But overall, yeah, I just really think it's important to have such a conversation, and have that with your families, have that with your friends. Maybe check yourself if you ever feel like life is unfair to you. Life is not unfair to you. I'm sorry, if you are in New Zealand and you have a job, right, and you're paying your bills and a roof over your head. Come on, please. But not saying that you have to always be grateful. We are human, of course. We're allowed to feel frustration and complain. But I just want more people to be empathetic, more people to be understanding. Don't be so judgmental, right? You need to understand that if someone has ended up in a bad situation, why did they end up that way? A really good documentary that I did actually watch. I didn't watch it, I didn't give it my full attention, but Scribe, he's a New Zealand musician. His story is super fascinating. He ended up, being addicted to methamphetamine, but his story, really highlights, if you want to, I guess, understand what I am meaning. His dad abused his brothers, physical abuse. They grew up in a very traumatic childhood. He turned to I guess. Just the struggles and the real struggles that families and could be your neighbor, who what they're going through. And I guess he was just torn to shreds, saying, oh my gosh, he's on how embarrassing, rah-de-rah. But if you understand someone's story, you would understand why they got there. Maybe in future episodes I'll talk about other stuff, but I'll leave it there. Again, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a rating, leave feedback, because that just really helps, right? So help me do that, and that would be amazing. Follow me on all my channels. If you want to contact me, best place would be rosiesue.co.nz. And if you want to sponsor an episode, hit me up. That would be awesome. I'd love to work with you. And yeah, stay tuned. I can't wait to have guests on in future series. And have a wonderful day. So thank you, everyone.